What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA Show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Mares. Legs has the day off. He's got some travel and stuff going on. He will be back with us rest of the week, including in studio here in Denver. He's going to be calling the Nuggets and the Dallas Mavericks on Friday, so both Thursday and Friday we'll be in person together. But to replace him today, I got one of the hidden gems in NBA analysis, my guy, Marc Campbell of the Low Man Post podcast, Low Man Post Substack, YouTube channel, everything, doing great work. Marc, how you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Excited to have you on. You were on last year. You gave us what the audience perceived to be an extremely hot take about Evan Mobley. You were very high on him, higher than Aliyah. You placed him above several players. And I feel like last year didn't quite hit. You know, Mobley was kind of the same guy. You could say there were some improvements, but you look at the numbers, kind of the same guy. Cavs, nobody really buying. But here we are. A year later, you had to wait to be validated, but a year later, Evan Mobley is dominating. The Cavs are dominating. You're looking a little prescient.
We're not drafting for that year. We're drafting for who you want for their career. Like, he tracks as the guy going forward. And, like, it's fine. It's a gift and a curse. Like, first one through the wall always gets bloodied. Like, it's one of those things. Go. I'm totally fine with it.
I love it, man. So you have it. We're going to talk about them later on in the show. We're also going to talk. You're going to have another one that I know the chat's not going to love. And I'm curious to see if you have the same sort of hit rate on this one. A criticism of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, maybe even a little skepticism of Shai, the MVP candidate. So we're going to get to that. We're also going to talk about your love of Cam Thomas. Man, I love these because I can't wait. Like, sometimes Legs will send this to me where he's like, I want to talk about this guy. And I'll go, he did that with Scottie Pippen Jr. this year. And I was like, all right, I can't wait to hear. He hit on that one. So I'm excited for that. But we're going to start with, as we always do, a deep dive on one of the games from last night. And what better game than the Timberwolves and the Suns? 120-117 game. And, you know, here's what was great about last night. Julius Randle arrives. You get, I don't know what we are, 15-ish games into the season. He gets his first signature moment, because I actually think a lot of his moments have been either muted or negative, you know, early on. You look at it and say things are clunky. But last night, he got his signature moment, a game winner, some big plays down the stretch in the clutch, but obviously none bigger than the three-pointer that he hit at the buzzer, as close to the buzzer as you can get, by the way. That ball was out of his fingertips a nanosecond in time, man. Even on replay, I had to watch it. I slowed it down. I was like, did he get that off? He did. And it was a big play. And before we break down the game or anything, getting a signature moment when you're on a new team, I feel like is huge. There's a hump that you have to get over to where it's like, all right, now I made a contribution to the team. I'm one of the guys. And you kind of felt that last night, the home crowd. He gives the awesome celebration. He kind of just puts the arm out. Everybody embraces him. And it felt big because everybody was celebrating. You could tell the team wanted to have that moment. Yeah. And I'm just curious what you think about guys getting a moment. Like, is that a thing that you feel like the Timberwolves are over one hump, not the hump, but they're over a little hump because now they have a moment where he kind of carried them through?
Yeah. Like, he had that one of us moment. It's almost like, as you were saying it, all I could think about was like Ben Affleck in The Town, where he's like, whose car are we taking? We're going to hurt. So whose car? Like, it feels like once you have that moment, like, now you're in. Like, you're in that squad, you're in. And like, I think that was massive for him, and like, huge shot. And one of the things about that play is it was drawn up for Ant. Like, Ant was coming around. I don't think Randle was the primary. Like, they wanted to get it to Ant, but like, you have a layer now with him, because like, Julius at one point was the epicenter of the Knicks. Like, everything ran through him. Like, he's not uncomfortable with being the guy and being able to like handle the ball and ISO and go create. And I think, like, different from their team last year, like, that's a layer where you couldn't do that. Like, you could give it to Cat to shoot it, but you couldn't give it to Cat 35 feet away and be like, hey, Cat, go get one for us.
So here's how I would put it, because they actually, and I want to talk about it in the fourth quarter, because there was a timeout they called. Coming out of the timeout, they drew up a play for Julius Randle. And I remember thinking, like, it was a big moment. You needed a bucket, and they went to Randle. They called his name. And that's obviously one use of him. He's comfortable with that. But I thought last night, the last play, to your point, you try to get Anthony Edwards getting the ball, going to his right, coming off the screen. They trap. And Julius Randle, I almost feel like the final form of this team is that Randle is the release valve, because he's a good release valve.
Yes.
Right. Oh. And that's how that play design was draw two on ball. All right. Let's see, what you can do. So to me, that is almost that. And the fact that I hate the spacing that the Timberwolves have with Randle and Gobert and McDaniels. I hate the spacing they have there. But last night in the clutch, they got a little bit of movement. Like there were some well-timed cuts. I don't know if it was good cuts because, they're starting to figure out the system, or just dumb luck, to be honest. Because when I watch them play, a lot of guys are cutting into the same space and stuff like that. Yeah. But at least last night, you saw a little bit of movement in the fourth quarter in the clutch, where I was like, all right, that's how they have to make this work. Well-timed cuts and release valves in the timing and everything. And do you, first of all, agree with me that that's going to be the challenge for them this year? And that last night was a move in the right direction?
Yeah, I think so. Danny Green and I were actually talking about this the other day, about this trade. And like, for me, he was talking about Ant shooting that many threes. And I think they're using the beginning of the regular season to get everybody like caught up to speed. And I think they're using it to kind of get comfortable with the things that actually beat them in the Western Conference Finals. So like, if you remember about like, Luka was shooting from deep. Luka was bringing people up to the level on ball screens. And because of that, like Lively was in the pocket. Lively was playing 3-on-2, 4-on-3, and like they were getting whatever they wanted. And so I think that they're working through these things where you can see Ant and Randle working in tandem in a different way than Ant and Cat couldn't. Now, like if you play drop against Ant, sure, Cat can pop and shoot. But I think what you're trending towards is people are going to blitz against Ant. They're going to get it out of his hands. And Randle playing downhill 4-on-3, 3-on-2 in the pocket, that's going to be something that's a very different element than they had before. And that's going to be something where he's incredibly comfortable playing with the ball in his hands, and he makes good decisions going downhill. So I think you saw some of that last night. There was one on the right wing where it was him and Ant working together. Ant got it to him. He was in the pocket, threw a lob to Gobert. Like that's an element that I think you're going to see. And I think it's something that beat them last year. And I think they took note of it. And I think they're working through that kind of Rolodex of decision-making.
Well, part of what makes him so effective there, and Cat had this in length, but he didn't necessarily have it in bully ball. He could do that. If you threw it in the post, he could play bully ball. But if you're getting it on the move, to your point, 4-on-3, Randle is so good that if that rotation guy is, even bigger players like like Donte DiVincenzo, or last night, Grayson Allen, who's, kind of a thicker bodied guy. Randle is the type of guy that size advantage is still there. Some bigs, and I think Cat is one of them, but bumps into Grayson Allen and he has to take 2 dribbles to go the long way around him or whatever. Randle's like right through you, get out of my way, and gets to the rim. And I think you saw that last night. And to me, when I look at it, Ant is stronger than his position. Randle is stronger than his position. Gobert is longer than his position. And even Jaden McDaniels is longer than his position. So when you can have physical mismatches around the court, that's when it's like, all right, your rotations and your switches now get thrown off. And Randle, I think, is really good at exploiting physical mismatches.
Yeah, per second spectrum last night, Randle set 20 screens, scored 1.231 points per screen. So like, it's one of those things where I always love when your best guys amplify one another's skill set. Like when they can compound the advantage that they have. And like, because Ant can play pick and roll offense, and because he's such a good shooter, because he's such a good downhill threat, those things, like it forces players to come up to the level. And like, what you really want is, you don't want Julius shooting a ton of threes. You want him catching it on advantage, because like he's such a strong player. He's such a big body. If he has an advantage, A, he's a good passer. And then B, if he's got an angle, like he's finishing it. Like he is a tank. You're not bumping him off his driving line. You're not stopping him from finishing. Like he'll shoot free throws all day. So I think the fact that like their best 2 players can amplify one another's skill set, no matter the pick and roll coverage, that's a great thing when it comes to like playoff basketball.
Yeah. But so you saying that I agree with, but Cat had the spacing advantage, and you felt that last year, for them, that he could step out and hit the 3. And obviously that changes the geometry of the court. But to your point, if you don't have both, the team can alter to the other side. I wonder though, as I watch the Timberwolves, and they have not been a great clutch time offense. Last night's a bit of an exception. Suns are shorthanded. I don't know how good defensively they're going to be in these types of moments anyway. So I feel like the opposite is true though. So Randle, if you can wall off those drives, if you can do it, which I think in the playoffs teams will be able to, I don't know that he's going to have the spacing advantage consistently. So is this a matter of in one hand out the other when you're the advantage you're talking about with Randle?
Well, like if you're going to wall off those drives, that means that you're not sending help to Ant. And like, I don't know, like if it gets playoff time, like if you want to guard Ant one-on-one, like be my guest. I'm betting on that. Like I'm betting on him one-on-one. Like I want that side of the bet. I don't want the defensive side. So I
What
think
about
that's
rotations though? What about, because okay, you put 2 on ball, then you have to like rotate out, but you're going to wall off Randle's drives because Randle's a good passer, but I don't know if you're going to lose to Jaden McDaniel's spot up threes and whoever. I mean, Donte DiVincenzo, yes, some other guys. Are you going to lose to that? And then on top of that, is he going to deliver the pass every time? Gobert had this issue, I think, back in Utah and even in the early days here, where he is a good guy at making the easy pass. But if you met him sort of in between, he has to take a dribble first to draw the defense and then make the pass. That's when things got kind of gummed up for him. And I wonder if Randle's similar. Like his thought process is score first, score second, pass third. And I just wonder if you can make that calculus a little bit difficult for him in a way that, all right, they're not scoring effectively now.
Yeah, I think playing from an advantage helps. Like Ant being the epicenter of this, the focal point that like starts the chain reaction, I think is going to be a big deal. And then I want to say self-awareness is going to be the biggest deal. Like, is he going to be able to reference back his New York playoff series and know that like he is not the primary, like, and he's got to be okay with being the secondary, playing from that advantage. And then like, it all comes down to Finch has made comments about him where Finch has a ton of belief in him. And you have to think that like that belief is allowing him to talk into his game where he can talk to Julius and be like, this is our path. Like, you want to win a championship? This is our path. This is what we need to do. And if he can lock that in, I think you see, Jaden McDaniels, it's the same thing as like Dallas was going to have to rely on Derek Jones Jr. and Najee Marshall this year, or Boston, they upgraded in those spots where it's Drew and Derek White and Jaylen Brown. It's one of those things where those options are always going to be there, but it's about like makes and misses. But I think you can create the great shots from Ant and trickle it down where things compound.
Where do you think they are in that process of
Early.
developing that identity? Yeah.
Early. I think this was a big deal. And I think the more that they can see on film, like, this is our guy, this is how we all move, based on the things he creates. And if people don't want to send help, like, this is where it stops and ends. Like, it's Ant. And so for me, like, I saw Ant live last year for the first time. I was visiting a client. I saw Ant, price worth every penny. Like, he's the one guy besides Steph. Like, if I'm going to pay to see somebody, he's so awesome. And I think he's getting better and better at processing the game. He's still a little ways away. Like, the assist to turnover isn't good enough. Like, the processing speed on like when help comes, I would love to get a little bit better. I think young players can sometimes fall into the trap of, I'm looking for score or assist. And I think sometimes it's really about like making the simple single pass that like starts the chain reaction to an advantage for the team and like being okay with that. And I think the more he gets okay with that, the better they're going to be.
Well, it's not even just making that pass. It's, can you draw the defense far enough away that the simple pass leads to the second pass, which is now the rotations are so far. And Legs and I have talked about this actually even all of last season. And obviously to start this year, because to me, that is the biggest differentiator between a great player like Ant being a great scorer and then being a guy who can be what you're talking about, the central hub. Sometimes it's a matter of 2 feet to the right. If you drag the defenders 2 feet more to the right, those swing passes have a better chance of paying off. And and I think Ant has made progress in the last year and a quarter. Will he get to the level that to be a full fulcrum like that, you have to be just elite at that skill? And I think he's on, like, to me, he's on that process, but he still has a long way to go before I buy that Ant is going to be the guy that is really manipulating the defenses to a point where they're just having to make tough decisions.
Yeah. But I think one of the things that's best about him is that it's going to start and end with him. Like, there's nothing athletically or there's nothing skill wise that will prevent him from reaching best player on best team. Like, he's got all that in the bag. So like, you're betting on a guy who like is supremely talented physically and skill wise. You're betting on him actually like accepting the process, learning the nuances, and getting there. And like he's so young into the process that like I would take the side that he's going to eventually figure it out.
Yeah. What else did you see in this game from the Timberwolves? I mean, that play was big. I'll tell you another play that stood out to me. And again, when I say I don't know if this was good process or they kind of stumbled onto it, one of the plays of the fourth quarter was Jaden McDaniels' tomahawk dunk. Just a beautiful example of what we're talking about. Compromising the defense, and then the ball got popping. Everybody behind it made good plays. The reason I say I don't know if it was good process or what have you is they did kind of cut into the same spot, but Jaden McDaniels just happened to find the perfect seam, perfect pass, and then just takes a one dribble to the rim. That was a phenomenal play. But when I watched it back, I watched it a few times, and I was like, was this like intentional or was it kind of lucky? And I kind of think it was kind of just like not lucky. You're making the right read, but not necessarily perfect spacing and timing on it, but it worked out.
No, but like they have, you said it earlier, they have plus length, plus size at like
Right.
so many positions. And like sometimes it's really about the angles are so small. Sometimes it's really about like, are you just bigger and stronger than the other guy? And like if you are like, and you're playing with good process and you're finding yourself into the right cutting angles and things like that, sometimes, yeah, you might have a few guys run into the same spot, but like, man, that's a special, special play. And it feels like that guy knows his role, like more so than anything else. Like that guy knows his role. And it always helps when the guy that you need to take like a little bit less offensive burden and a little bit more defensive burden, it always helps when that guy's already been paid. Because if that guy hasn't been
Right.
paid,
Well,
that guy's really like, okay, I got to go get it right now because I need another team to see me as a primary guy, and then they're gonna go pay me. Like he's already been paid, so like he's willing to buy in. I think the guys that they have and how the salary like structure breaks down, they're in a perfect spot where they can have role acceptance and role enthusiasm.
I like that point. It's a bigger deal than most people realize. And the teams that can avoid the, hey, we're at our best, but we have this one guy who needs paid next year. And like, it's
Mm-hmm.
tough because as an individual, look, you got to take care of your family. You want to get paid, but sometimes your best role is doing less. And that is a
Mm-hmm.
tough spot to be in. But that's
Yeah.
part of why, like, one of my takes on the NBA right now, it's kind of mid. And I mean that as in there's so much talent, but the CBA has distributed that talent throughout the league so that Oklahoma City, when they're healthy, I think they're going to have it figured out. Boston, we know what they look like when they have it. Cleveland right now is playing great. All these other teams are kind of figuring out who they are. And that's some teams are going to just fall apart because they're never going to figure it out. But teams like
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota, it was kind of neat to watch them like level. I feel like last night they leveled up in a way. There's these little
Yeah.
level up moments throughout the year. And I just think there's a lot of teams that are in that boat where you say, I could see it leveling up. I could see it not. Last night, they took a step to being one of the teams that is actually going to level up who they are. And I think it's kind of neat.
Do they have a little young Nuggets vibe of
Oh,
like
don't do this to me.
you've seen and now it's not Jokic, but like you've seen they've drafted the guy, they're bringing him along, they started to like figure out what goes around him, and then they pull like the big trade where it's like, okay, Gary's out, Aaron Gordon's in, like Cat's out, or Gary was
Yeah,
Mr. Nugget, and Cat was Mr.
right.
Minnesota,
That's
Cat's
true.
out,
Hey.
Julius is
Oh,
in, like,
no.
there's a lot of similarities, and like your guy TC. He's running
Yeah.
the same ship. Like, it's one of those things. Like, they got a lot of Nuggets vibes to them.
I'll tell you what, I'm a complete Tim Conley truther. I just think there's a lot of like really smart people in basketball. I think Tim gets how pieces connect better than most. That's
Mm,
one of his talents. So the difference is when Aaron Gordon came over, I kind of immediately thought that was a perfect fit. Like he fits
yeah,
what they're doing. It made sense. Randall, I'm more skeptical of, but to your point, there is a path to it. There is a thought process behind why he will be different than Cat, even despite his
yeah.
weaknesses. And at least last night, it kind of came through. So I guess I'll
Tim's
say
not,
maybe.
yeah. Tim's not scared to be bloodied. He's not scared to be the
Yeah,
first one through the wall. Like, whether it's the Rudy
yeah,
trade or the Julius trade, like,
true.
he's not scared. He's truly not. Like, he sees like his path and he's like, okay, this is it. Critics be damned, skeptic be damned, like popular opinion be damned. Like, I know what we're looking for, and this is what we're looking for.
Well, another guy he brought in was Donte DiVincenzo, who had 15 points last night, 5 of 10 from the 3-point line. He has one of the quickest releases in the NBA from like when he catches it to when he goes up, which I feel like is, in addition to shooting, how quickly you can get the shot off / how tall your release is. Those are two variables that are so important for spacing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're slow and short, okay, guys can help off a little bit more. So he has a quick release, which helps. But The one thing I am kind of curious about is when the season started, when that trade happened, I kind of thought he would play more because I thought their best lineups, they were going to have their big lineups they go to, but they can play small a little bit. And that hasn't been the case. 26 minutes last night, and he was really good. So how do you feel like he's fitting into this ecosystem? And what do you think the next steps are? Like, is he a bigger part of this going forward and they're easing into it? Or is this the role for him?
I think they're figuring it out. I think this is a role. They have a little bit of like a EuroLeague team vibe to them, where they've got like
Mm.
8 guys. Like you're gonna play about these amount of minutes. Like this is it. Like I think we've seen their playoff rotation. Unless Dillingham does like something incredible during the year, I think he's going to be break in case of emergency when it comes to that point. Like we know the 8 guys that are going to play. They know their roles. And I think this is kind of Dante's role. And I think there will be games where he gets it going, like he gets it rolling, and you'll see more Dante than Mike Conley because you'll see Ant take over primary ball handling duties. And I think like as you get into playoff time, it's going to be in Ant's hands. So if Dante gives you more size, if he gives you more shooting, I think you could see a lot more of that because then you're only worried about Rudy and the dunker catching lobs and Jaden cutting, but you have Julius playmaking, you have Dante spacing. So I think you could see more of that, but I think this is the role. And when it comes to shooting, his release, shooters, you don't want them to be moving quick once they're starting their shot process. And quick shooters, they come from doing the work early. They come from shot prep footwork. They come from reading the plays. They come from understanding where is space. They're moving to space. They're there, they're doing all the work early. So for me, when I see Dante, he's doing such a good job always of doing the work early with his feet and then understanding what is a high hip closeout that I'm driving and what is something where I'm getting this off in rhythm and balance, and he's shooting those.
Yeah. Is there anything else you're seeing from the Timberwolves that you want to talk about that you find interesting?
No, I think Rudy's always interesting because like Booker yesterday, Booker was absolutely cooking in the pick and
Yeah.
roll. And like Rudy's always this point of contention because he played drop, and Booker really, he got after him when he played drop. Like he's very creative and witty with going around screens,
Yeah.
coming back around, snaking it, shooting threes, and then you bring Rudy up to the level and you can get the ball out quick. So I think Rudy's always one of those lightning rod topics where he's so good at what he does, but there's always this, when you deal with a guy like Booker and he gets it going, there's always this real like point of contention where it's like, but like we can lose that way. And I think to me, he's always one of those things that I look throughout the year of how does he do when a guard really gets it going? And if they match up with Luka, they match up with Booker. If they match up with one of these guys that gets it going, like, is he played off the court? Does it become something where he's like really, everything's Rudy's fault? He's one of the things that I always look at.
Well, that thing, first of all, fans just absolutely despise him. He might be the most hated good player of my lifetime because he is good. He's clearly useful and stuff, but he has a limitation that just fans hate. So you ask, will fans blame him if things go south? Of course. Like
It's always based on how much you get paid, right? Like if
It's
he was a
fair,
if he
though.
was a $4 million player, then he wouldn't receive the criticism. It's always because the league has a salary cap, so it's always like, what is your production per dollar value? And so, like to me, that's why he's always the one catching heat because when you make 50, you have to produce at a certain level, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand what he's doing. And then when you get to the playoffs, and we have to solve this one specific problem. When that problem just keeps getting pushed over and over and over again, it becomes very, somebody's like, uncle.
Right. And it's also reputation too. Like Clint Capella is similar, but nobody thinks of Clint Capella as the best defender in the NBA. So if he gets played off the court, it's like, it's a matchup issue. So money and reputation, certainly.
Yeah.
You mentioned Booker, though. If we go to the other side of this for Phoenix, obviously shorthanded in this game. No Kevin Durant, no Bradley Beal. So, they've been playing well, 9-5. But my thing with Booker is, in 2023 in the playoffs, he reached a level that made me change the way I thought about him offensively. He didn't miss shots. He got to his spots and he just elevated and was in such rhythm. I feel like we haven't seen that version of Booker very much this season, but I kind of thought we saw it last night. I mean, 44 points, 7 assists, just 4 turnovers, which for the defense they were going against, they have great on-ball defenders. And on top of that, he had the ball in his hands the entire night. He played 40 minutes. I thought that last night was one of the only times this season I looked at it and I go, that's the Booker that makes me believe in the Suns. They have Kevin Durant. They've got good players. But Booker being a guy that can touch that level makes them compelling, makes them exciting. And I
Yeah.
saw it last night, and I just thought it was meaningful because he missed some in the clutch, but he hit some tough shots where I'm like, that's the breaker. That's where you run your offense. You got to
Yeah.
stop, and he still scored.
Yeah. Big night for him per second spectrum last night, 78 touches, second most of the season,
Man,
1.239 points per touch, third most of the season. And then, you know, he's
crazy
kicking
number.
ass. He was really doing it last night. And to me, like what you talked about the playoffs, like sliding doors, they had all the juice, they had all the assets. Like I really wish they did something other than Durant and Beal, because I dream of a day when we see a team fully optimized to fit his skill set. He's one of those guys, like in the same way as Ant, where you see him and you're like, okay, like this guy gets it. There's no box you can put him in. He knows how to play, you know, ISO basketball. He knows how to play pick and roll basketball. He knows how to score for himself. He knows how to create for others. Like he's one of those guys that like I really wish at some point in his career, now that he's evolved, you know, past early Booker days, I really hope we get to see a team that's built around him where he's the centerpiece, because he's one of those guys I feel like can be the best player on the best team as well.
And this team is weird for him because just the nature of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, sometimes he is asked to be something of a point guard or just a facilitator, the entry guy, and he's good at that and he accepts that role, but it almost like lessens his true impact. Not last night when he had not only the freedom to be as aggressive as he was, but also just like it was out of necessity. When he's able to do that, you see that there are layers. So it's like, man, this guy can really whip out of tight spaces and he had a fall away in the corner. I thought it was going to be the dagger where great defensive possession from the Wolves in the clutch. And he's like, all right, well, I got to make something happen. And he gets this Kobe-esque fall away going to the baseline. And
over your guy, Rudy.
Yeah, it was pure. My guy, Rudy. Oh, no. And it was pure because you look at that and you go like, those are the game breakers, man. Those are the ones where you're like, what can we do more than that? And so I wonder if he can be that guy, though, with Kevin Durant, or if the nature of the dynamic is he just won't get that many opportunities to do those things.
Yeah. Even more impressive than that shot, and that was incredibly impressive, was the next play, the Grayson Allen three. We're down one. It's the first time Minnesota's taken a lead. Like he goes through the process, creates a rotation in the defense, and then finds a wide open shooter. And like there's a layer to his game that is the playmaking layer, the creativity layer. Like that's the layer where I think he can be the best player, because he's willing to make the simple play that unlocks the rotation. Like he got blitzed the third most yesterday out of any game this season. And like you saw it where he was cooking so much, it was up at half court, right? And he's willing to throw the pocket pass to unleash somebody. He's got that Luka vibe to him where he can push the Overton window of the defense out so far that it creates so much space for the other four to play 4-on-3. And to me, that's why I want to see it with him. I really want to see it. And it's the money, because Kevin Durant's 50, Bradley Beal's 50. So like that's $100 million of your cap going to these two guys that aren't really built to optimize Booker.
Right. Yeah. The other thing about him last night, you mentioned all of the traps, which I didn't realize it was the third most of any player has received, which is crazy because there's some players that get trapped. Oh, just of him. I got you. But he gets trapped a lot. But the thing about him is Jaden McDaniels, great defender. Anthony Edwards, great defender. They have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Those are guys that typically when they trap, I mean, you saw what happened to Jamal Murray last year with those guys pressuring him. He couldn't wiggle out of it. Booker could. Like Booker was very comfortable wigging out of those. And that shows you just kind of a difference to his game. Real quickly, between these two teams, are you buying them? I mean, the Suns are. It's so hard to get into the Suns because they lose their guys so often that their season just has these stops and starts, and it's just always going to be that way. But they've been impressive, 9-5. The Timberwolves 8-6. So between these two, are you buying both? Is there one you're buying more than the other?
I'm buying Minnesota more. I think they got a lot of experience last year. I'm buying the evolution of the team that Tim Connolly's put in place with Randle and DiVincenzo in, Cat out. I'm buying the Ant evolution of understanding how to move defenses in terms of bringing two to the ball, getting the ball out, like starting the rotation. I'm buying that. I'm buying the whole Minnesota evolution from game 1 to game 82. I think we're going to see a very different team.
All right. Well, there you go. Let us know in the comments right now if you're watching. Let us know who you're buying between the Wolves and the Suns. If you had to pick one, of course, we saw these teams in the playoffs last year. We know how that went. Some changes, but I am curious to see if everybody agrees with him because I'm a little bit more on the fence about it. I'm also on the fence about his takes on Cam Thomas and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which we'll get to the other side. He is Marc Campbell of the Low Man Post. Let's take our first break, and on the other side, we'll get to those two things. First, let's talk about goals for a minute. It's end of year. It's time to start thinking about goals. So I'm going to start looking back at your goals for this year. How are you tracking with the ones you set for your business earlier this year? Are you close? If not, do you know why you haven't hit them so far? You have year-end goals, and Constant Contact has what it takes to help you make them faster. No matter how experienced you are with digital marketing, Constant Contact has the tools to make your marketing run smoother. Sell more, raise more, build more genuine relationships with your audience with Constant Contact's suite of digital marketing tools, all made to fast track your success. You no longer need to struggle with expensive, slow, and measurable approaches to marketing your business. Tap email marketing that helps you create and send the perfect email to every customer. Own the smartphone by adding texting to your marketing strategy. Connect with over 2 billion people on social media with an all-in-one tool for posting and sharing. And sell more online in less time with Constant Contact's powerful e-commerce tools. Time to put the go in your 2024 business goals with email, social, SMS, and customized marketing campaigns built for you in just a few clicks. Ready, set, go to constantcontact.com/allcity. Start your free trial. Go to constantcontact.com/allcity for your free trial. Also want to tell you guys about Game Time with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You guys know the deal. You want to go to buy tickets. You don't want to buy them at full price. So you want to kind of wait for prices to drop. You could go, you could not go. Hop on there. You can set alerts for a specific seat you're looking for, and it'll send you a push notification letting you know that your prices have dropped. You can also get flash deals and zone deals. And the best part is the last minute ticket. So you go to the game, you park your car, you pay for parking. You know you can walk up to the gate without a ticket, hop on the Game Time app, and you're sure to find prices at the last second where people are looking to sell their tickets. It's a really great product, and it's a super great interface, really easy to use. And best of all, you can get a code with us to get you $20 off. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account. Use code ALLNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code ALLNBA for $20 off. Makes a good holiday gift. You want to buy tickets for the family or for some friends for Christmas? Hop on the Game Time app. Use that code ALLNBA. You get $20 off, and there you go. You got a nice little Christmas gift for your friends and family. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I think I said, what did I say? Low. I always say Low Man Post. You know, because it's like, I do this all the time. It's Low Man Help. It's Low Man Help. Obviously,
you put Zach Lowe and I together. We're an amoeba right now in your mind.
That's so true, man. You obviously can tell. Played at North Carolina. He's been a shooting coach in the NBA. Works with a lot of great athletes. He knows what he's talking about, and he has a really, really good Substack that I highly recommend you checking out, as well as podcasts. Just had Danny Green on the other day, breaking down it had a lot of interesting moments. I always like I cover the Nuggets, and I always like when you give a perspective, either that perfectly aligned where I'm like, man, that's like 12 layers deep. I love when you're not covering the Nuggets. You're not watching them every night, but you can go 12 layers deep on it. I highly recommend it, man. Really good deep dives around the NBA. And speaking of deep dives, if you want to go deep, we're going to talk Brooklyn Nets. Because as we were prepping for the show, and I love it. Right now, what's tough right now about this show and really about covering the NBA in general is there's about 14 teams in the Western Conference that are really interesting. Yeah. There's about 2 teams that are good in the East and maybe another 3 or 4 that are interesting. And there's a whole bunch of teams that you're like, I just don't know what's interesting about this team right now. But the Brooklyn Nets are not on my radar. They do play hard. They actually compete. They're in a lot of games with teams much better than them. So, you give them that credit. But I don't necessarily say I'm like enamored with them. You kind of are. Why is that?
I'm just so enamored with where the Cam Thomas story goes. Like he's in this place where he's a top 5 scorer in the league currently, I think. I'm not sure. I haven't checked.
He was up there early on. I don't know if he's still there, but
okay. Yeah. He's in this place where Devin Booker and Bradley Beal are the perfect comparisons, where Booker has gotten to a place where you could actually optimize a team around him and he could be a champion as the best player. Bradley Beal had that opportunity, and it was very obvious, like he could not be the best player on even like a good playoff team. And I think Cam Thomas isn't in that spot. And when I look at players, like made developmental plans for 6 years for guys, when I look at Cam Thomas, I look at him being at this inflection point moment of there are so many times where I see him in a place where he can make the simple read of help up the lane, pass to the dunker, or he's already cracked the shell. There was one with Christian Brown when he was coming over with low man help on a pick and roll and could have easily went to a 2-on-1 side, but it was a charge. And to me, like those plays are the Bradley Beal plays where it's like, I'm going to lead the league in scoring. I'm going to get buckets. And the Devin Booker side of the coin is I quickly move those to the next advantage, next advantage, next advantage. And to me, like it's fascinating because if he does go to the Devin Booker side, whoa, like Brooklyn looks really different in terms of their future. And if he goes to the Bradley Beal side, like now maybe he's even better as like a six man or something like that. Like, I don't know. So like he's at this inflection point moment of, am I going to level up in terms of understanding adult basketball and understanding like how to play with process, like what's best for us. And that to me is super interesting of being in that place.
I have less faith that Cam Thomas is going to become that guy. And what's funny about him is I don't think there's really big questions about his scoring. I mean, can he be in the upper echelon of scores like a Devin Booker? I mean, Devin Booker is one of the best shooters. Cam Thomas can be that guy. He's shorter. He elevates like insane on his jumper. I think he jumps higher than any player in the NBA on his 3-point shot, and I would assume that's probably true of his mid-range as well. He really elevates on it. But I don't know if he's quite going to be as effective of him because of those physical limitations. But to your point, he plays like a guy that thinks what you said earlier. I need a contract extension. How do I get there? 30 points a game. When I actually think that's not true. My question with him is not can he score, it's can he make those other plays? And, that's a tough sell, but that's my biggest thing. I doubt his willingness, his want to, and his ability to become that other guy.
Yeah, you've probably seen Along Came Polly, like Claude. Yeah. Claude the scuba, he tells a great story about the hippo, and it like tries to paint its stripes, but he's not the zebra. And so like, Cam Thomas, like he kind of is what he is, and he's shown us what he is. Like he's a bucket getter, but like he's going to get buckets, and it's a reality of the NBA. Like he didn't get a deal in extension time, so like he's going into RFA or he's going into extension. Like he's trying to get paid, and so like he sees it now as a certain way, and like does he evolve? And I don't know if I'm willing to take either side of the coin when it comes to him. It's just something that like I'm incredibly interested to see because like when players can evolve to that level, they really change the dynamics of a team's future. Like if you look at Maxey, like Maxey made that jump, that evolution. Halliburton, he made that jump, that evolution. And like when you have an offensive engine that you can be like, all right, we get to the playoffs and like this action is going to work for us. And Booker's the same way. Like Booker can generate a great shot for the Suns every single possession because he can either shoot himself or create rotations. And Cam, like there's so many moments where I see him getting into these spots and it is Cam Thomas scoring mode. And like that to me, like being able to flip the switch and evolve as a player and understanding like where you stand in terms of creating opportunities for others, like that's a huge step for a player to make.
I think first of all, I don't know if Halliburton's a good comp. I do like the other one you gave, but Halliburton is a natural passer. I mean, he wants to pass first and foremost. So it's almost not a challenge for him. He is designed to be an offensive hub, whereas Cam Thomas to me is designed to be a bucket, and to be a bucket getter. And I think one of the things I think about with him is this team that he's on is such a bizarre motley crew of players. His role probably should be bucket getter. I don't know if this is how would you run this team? It's not that they're bad, but if you're telling Cam Thomas, a bucket getter, learn how to run the team, I don't even know what that would mean. Like, who's he setting the table for?
Yeah, well, they're kind of good in terms of like when they get open. Like Cam Johnson is a really good player. Dorian Finney-Smith is a really good player. Dennis Schroeder is a really good player. Like these are productive players. Like if I told you could put Devin Booker on Brooklyn, how different would you feel about him?
That's a good question.
So it's one of those things where they don't have bad parts. Like, contenders are drooling to get their hands on Dorian Finney-Smith or Cam Johnson. Like I know a team, as soon as Cam Johnson and Bridges got traded there, like there were 2 first-round picks being offered for those guys, Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson. Like they have real players. So like, you can look at it as like, if you're Cam Thomas, like, oh, I'm just a bucket getter. And like, sure, no problem. Then you can get paid Jordan Clarkson money at 14, 15. But like, you have an opportunity to show like, oh man, I can be a lot more. Like I can evolve. Well, you can get paid 30, 40. You can be one of those guys. But like, you have an opportunity right now with this team with Fernandez, like who has given you the keys, who is giving you like Cam Thomas is leading the league in handoffs this year. Like he's creating opportunities for him to play on the move with speed, create opportunities for himself and others. Like, you don't get these if you're playing in the NBA. You don't get opportunities where you get to showcase, like, I can be the guy that often. Like, guys dream of this opportunity, and like, he's in this spot now where it just becomes like, am I going to show that I can be more than just a guy that gets buckets?
Is there anybody else on that roster that you're interested in? I mean, I agree with you. Dorian Finney-Smith, mostly Cam Johnson. I'm higher on him. I love Cam Johnson. I just think that's
I love Cam.
He's a championship piece. He knows where to be. His shot's pretty, and he defensively, it's not like he's elite, but he's not ever in the wrong spot, which is,
no.
If you're a shooter, that's half the battle. Just be in the right spot and give your team a chance to make plays defensively. Dorian Finney-Smith, I'm a little less like I trust him a little bit less, I guess, offensively, but those are interesting role players. Is there anybody else on that roster that you're kind of interested in, either with Brooklyn or as a piece that you're like, that's another championship part they could trade off?
I don't know. Brooklyn's so interesting in terms of they went through this cycle with Kenny Atkinson, where they had a team that was young, scrappy, these like random motley crew parts put together, and they started to evolve, and then they took the chips off the table and went star mode, got rid of Kenny. And so like, there's some guys on this roster that like, it would be interesting to see them kind of move forward together. I'm not really sold on Zaire Williams, not really sold on Johnson. Nick Claxton is interesting. I think Jalen Wilson is an interesting player. I like guys that can kind of like fill in the gaps, different places, that are incredibly intelligent players. They know when to cut, they know when to shoot, they know how to play basketball, they know how to play from an advantage. Like, those guys I love in terms of being complementary for other teams. It'll be interesting to see if they sell off the parts come February, or if they kind of like think about, these are things that we'd like to see moving forward.
My worst trait as an analyst is when I see potential in a player, like, you just get so hung up on the potential is there, like it could work out. And sometimes you're like, guys, the writing's on the wall that they're not going to reach that potential. The worst of the example of this is me and Ben Simmons, because I watch Ben Simmons. It's not like I believe in this guy. Like, that's an example of a guy I don't believe in. But when you watch him, you're like, he's so good at a lot of basketball. He's like really good at a lot of it. If he could just be good, and it's like, he's not going to, though. He's never going to be good at layups.
It's a little essential, right? What's interesting about Ben is like, you hear, and this happened with Zion earlier this year, where he's like, I'm not a 5. Herb Jones is playing the 5. Like, okay, Herb's going to start at the 5. Right. Ben has constantly been like, I'm a point guard. I'm not a center. I'm not, but he's in a contract year. And lo and behold, Ben Simmons can get on the court playing center. So Ben Simmons is playing center. And like, stuff like that is always so interesting. Ben and Cam are actually the top handoff combo in the league. And I think like, there is something to Ben being a changeup of like an offensive hub, in the way of like Bam or Sabonis or any of those guys, like grabbing and go. Mobley, like grab, go into a DHO. Like, those guys are like Mack trucks and 18 wheelers coming down at you, like, if they can handle. And I think the more they lean into stuff like that, of like Cam Johnson coming off DHOs in the secondary, Cam Thomas, Dorian Finney-Smith, Schroeder, those kind of stuff like that. Like, Fernandez is from that tree. Jokic, Sabonis, like, he's from that tree where this is the stuff that he likes and he's seen before. So like, that to me is interesting about them. And that's pretty much it.
Well, the truth is, you look at the skill set and you're like, could this guy be Draymond Green? Like a different version of Draymond Green? No. Yes. Will he? No. And that's the thing that you have to, like, at a certain point, you have to move on. But he's a guy I watch, and every time I watch him, I'm like, man, he could be.
He sucks you in, huh?
He sucks you. I mean, he doesn't anymore because I moved on. But I'm saying he's an example of a guy that can suck you in. All right, I teased it. We have to get to it. You have written not one but 2 pieces expressing your doubt about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's ability to be a championship piece, which to me feels wild. 1, I think they have a phenomenal coach, phenomenal supporting cast. 2, he's so freaking good at what he does. He's unbelievable. But you have doubts about it. Why?
A championship piece, sure. I'm talking about the best. Like the head of a championship team. Like, I don't want to say an argument, but a discussion, a lively debate with a scout that was in town. He was going to Chapel Hill to watch some guys, and we were talking in the practice gym for like 20, 30 minutes. It's an island that I'm willing to stand on, because I feel like if you're the best player and you're a point guard and you're a ball handler on a championship team, you have to be able to stretch the defense to a place that creates advantages for others. And if you look at Shai, while he's incredible at doing the things he does, there's never been a guard that's been able to not shoot from volume on pick and roll threes or anything like that and stretch the defense to a place where it's actually profitable for everybody else in the playoffs, because there is a certain box you can put them in when they get into stuff. And the decrease in the number of pick and rolls he runs from regular season to the playoffs is drastic every time he's been in there. And you see it with guys like Ja Morant when in the regular season, Seth Partnow talks about this of GTO versus FEP. So the regular season being game theory optimal, we're just working on our habits. So teams aren't willing to embarrass people. They're not willing to go under every screen. Versus the playoffs, it's FEP. It's exploitative play. And teams are willing to press on one issue and say, we're not moving on until you can solve this. So when you see guys like Ja Morant in the playoffs and the Lakers are going under every single screen, well, they're just saying, we don't believe you can beat us 4 times in a row making this shot. And if we don't have to crack our defensive shell to cover you, well, you're not going to get downhill. You're not going to create opportunities for others. And I think Shai falls into that bucket where until you can actually prove to us that you will beat us 4 times in a row doing this, our shell is going to stay compressed. We're not going to give everybody else easy opportunities. And I think you're going to continuously see that. And it's going to be a question of, can he solve that or not?
Well, a couple things on that. His 3-point volume is up this year. I think he's only shooting 31% right now. He started hot. I look at it and I go, I think he's better. I think he's getting better at that. He's comfortable with his step back. When he's on, he hits him in volume. So he has demonstrated an improvement there. Number 2, I think Dagnot's a great coach, and I think the way that they set their screens up is among the best in all of the NBA. They use guard-to-guard action. They ghost a lot of the screens. They start them flat, and it just makes it really hard. You want to try to shade him to a side. You highlighted this about how you're almost downing the screen, but you're really only downing it at a 3-degree angle because the screens are so flat that you can't jump too far in the side. So you almost have to just kind of do it. But I feel like they just have over the years gotten so good at those screens. He's so good at rejecting the screen, and you can't get too far on him that I feel like that's partly they're almost working to mitigate that. He needs to be better at taking threes, but they also mitigate your ability to trap and to do some of these other things with how they use their guard-to-guard action and their flat screens.
I haven't watched him shoot a lot this year. The pieces you're talking about that I wrote were from last year. I don't know if there's mechanical changes or not, but this might be a little nerdy. But I've worked with
You're
guys
a shooting coach.
Yeah, I'm a shooting coach. This is going to be super nerdy. But the off the dribble threes, if anybody actually reads it, is the volume that he takes from shooting step backs is so much greater than anything going downhill. And the reason for that is he shoots more of a push shot. He shoots with weight loaded on his toes. And so when we talk about shooters, like Devin Booker, because of his mechanics and his base and his footwork, he can shoot from any launch point. He can shoot off screens. He can shoot off pick and roll. He can shoot off isolation. He can shoot step back. Shai's a very limited shooter, or he was last year, in terms of how he can shoot 3-point shots because he uses chest power. He uses power from the front part of his body, not the posterior part of his body. And so to me, when you look at him play, yes, he can shoot threes from a step back, but there's a certain point where that only creates a shot for him. He's not moving the shell out. Whereas Luka versus the Timberwolves, because he can shoot from any different launch point, he's able to pull defenders out. He's able to create 4-on-3s. Same thing with Ant. So to me, it just becomes one of those things where how he shoots the ball is limiting to what he's capable of doing in the playoffs and for his team.
And when you're talking about mechanics here, because this is a really interesting point, if we simplify it, and this is maybe oversimplifying it, he's really good going backwards on his shot, but the mechanics are such that going forward, even drive, pull up, the balance is all off. So something about his comfort level going backwards gets him into rhythm of his shot. And it's funny because his game is so heavily predicated on step backs, even when they're 4 feet away, right? He'll get all the way to the basket and then step back a few feet. And that's just and then he uses the fake on that and everything else. Everything comes off of the step back. So it's almost like if you're trying to teach better balance, his mechanics help him with the thing he's best at, but they also maybe make it impossible for him to adjust those mechanics to be better, going forward. Cause it's almost like he has to have 2 shots in his arsenal, the step back shot and the forward shot, which the balance is just so different.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we talk about self-awareness. And one thing is, even in this conversation, he knows himself incredibly well. He knows what's comfortable to him. He knows how to lean into those things, and he hunts those things. So there's a real, pride that he takes in knowing his game. You can see that. Like, he's an incredible player, but it's just one of those things where I logged it in the piece, and I don't have it up. I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it was to the point where he had shot maybe like 7 threes off a pick and roll, and he'd shot maybe like 70 at that point off a step back. And so just like a
Yeah.
step back only creates a shot for himself. But with the mechanics, we talk about push shots. When you step backwards, like, your weight is naturally loaded on your toes. Like, you're able to have more space between you and the defender, where it can be launched from a lower launch point of closer to your chest. And it's actually not at risk of being blocked as much as if you're going forward into the shot.
What's different about him and Jalen Brunson? Because I think they both play a similar style where they're constantly getting you off balance with this little step
Mm-hmm.
back, step through. So, but Jalen Brunson has good balance on his shot. Like, he's able to have two different balances.
Did you say that they're both grifters? Is that what you said? They're
I did not say that, but
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna, I definitely don't love the foul calls that make me most insane are the ones that both of them excel at for sure.
Yeah. The grifters. I think the biggest thing is Brunson has very different mechanics in terms of how he loads power in his hips to shoot the ball. He's incredible in terms of footwork. They both have great footwork. Brunson's footwork is a lot more balanced in terms of creating opportunities for himself to go 360 forward, down, back, all these things. He's able to load power in his right hip. And if you're a shooter, you load power opposite what hand you shoot with. I think Shai does an incredible job of using footwork and using angles to get downhill, to get to middies, to get to these things. And when you're an NBA player, the difference of shooting, 19 feet and in, these guys are incredible. You can they aim the ball in. They don't even have to try to shoot. But when you start to shoot 24, 25 feet, like, this is a math equation. It's speed, distance, power. And so, like, your footwork, your balance, how you load power, how you transfer power kinetically from the floor through your hips to the basketball, like, that has to be so crisp and clean to be able to do that. And Booker, Brunson, guys like that, they do it at such a high level. And Shai has good feet. He's got incredible feet, but shooting the ball from distance with his footwork, he's not able to optimize it in the same way that these other guys are because of his mechanics.
I'm kind of fascinated by this idea of you can be so good at a specific skill, but in being so good at that, it almost makes you weaker at something else. And this might be a case of that. He's so good at the step back that it actually changes his footwork on his shot overall, and it maybe can't be overcome. I don't know. I'm a little more. I don't think you sold me, but it's an interesting argument. And now as we get to the playoffs this year, I mean, this is the first year where there's going to be expectations on the Thunder. Last year,
They
they
were the
kind of
one
went.
seed last year.
I know, but they were young. It was their first time. Like, they were the one seed, but nobody was picking them to win the title. This year, I think they're going to be the one seed again, and people are going to say, now you have to get over the hump. You need to make it to the finals, or otherwise, I think for the Thunder, they have to look at this year and go, I mean, we'll see what happens with Chet.
What's a
But you have to
failure?
look. It's a failure if you don't. Like, you're at the point now where the expectation is we eventually have to win, and how many chances are we going to get? So this is one. The
Mhm.
last team, though, to talk about is the Cavs. Obviously, the hottest team in basketball. What a great story. First of all, with the Cavs, before we get to your Evan Mobley victory lap, the first thing is basketball is so great because teams can get the magic. They can just get this thing where
Yeah.
everybody gets their role, understands it, accepts it. And then there's a whole other layer when guys seem to enjoy their role. It's not even acceptance, like
Mhm.
begrudging acceptance. I have to do this, but it's like, no, this is what I love. And I credit Kenny Atkinson. I think it's one of the number one things a coach can do. I think Dagnott is good at this as well. You look
Yeah.
around your roster and say, what are these guys good at? What do they like doing? And how do I make all of those things fit together? And when I watch the Cavs play, they play with belief, confidence, enthusiasm. But it seems like it stems from they all have a role and they all like the role that they have, and it
Mhm.
works together.
Yeah. They had they lost it last year for a little bit. I think Garland going out was a big deal, and him coming back, like, losing so much weight, was a big deal. But the year before, they started to have the juice. Like, I had a teammate, Ed Davis, I had somebody that I was working with who was playing on that team. Those dudes loved each other. Like, that Rubio was there, the vibes were high. Like, they had
Yeah.
this thing where they were always barking, "Woof, woof, woof." They were all dogs. Like, it was a thing. Like, they had a group chat name like dogs. Like, they loved each other, and those vibes are back. Kenny
Yeah.
Atkinson brought the vibes back. I think it's really cool when you see people that understand what they're doing, are incredibly happy about what they're doing, and are, they don't care who gets the credit. Roy Williams, first day of practice, every single day at Carolina, first thought of the day would always be, it's amazing what can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. And like Cleveland's in that mode right now. And it's special when a team has that going.
It really is, man. And they're kind of a joy to watch. It's what makes basketball great is it really is not the sum of individual parts. It's how they come together. And when it comes together, it almost feels spiritual because it took sacrifice. It took all these different things. And when I watch him play, it's funny, but it is a spiritual experience for him right now because I didn't buy him going in. I'm not going to buy him until they get through the whole season. And I know Cavs fans will say that's unfair. It kind of is, but when you're climbing, I think it's a fair thing to say, look, you got to prove it to me all year. You got to get there. But right now they have an incredible connection. And really, if there's two guys I singled out, Darius Garland to me is taking a confidence leap because I think he's always had some skill and some talent, but it's almost like he's more comfortable than ever being the guy in big moments. He was even, last night. And to me, I don't even know if there's a skill thing that he has broken through. I just think that he has this, way about him that he takes over in big games, and Donovan Mitchell has let him take over in big games as well.
Yeah. So the 2 years ago prior was really Darius's ascent, and I watched all those games. One thing that blew me away was like he reminded me of a hybrid of like Steve Nash and Steph Curry put together because him in the pick and roll was special. And Mobley, it was Mobley's rookie year. Allen was there. He does such an incredible job. I call it breaking the secondary defender. And so like when he's in the pick and roll and say they're playing drop or anything at the level, whatever it is, like whoever the secondary defender is, you have to break their coverage. You can't allow them to play two. You have to force them to make a choice. Are they going to guard the roll man or are they going to guard you? You have to break their coverage to one of you. And he did such an incredible job that year of consistently breaking the secondary defender where if they didn't come to him, it was floater. If they did, it was lob. And to me, the vibes are back when it comes to him in the pick and roll, where he is constantly just cracking secondary defenders, where he doesn't miss reads. He's incredible in the pick and roll. And my only gripe with him in the 2 years ago, and it seems to be like he's kind of over that hump, is he just didn't shoot enough. Like when I watched him, I was like, oh, when I watched him 2 years ago, I was like, he needs to be letting 10 threes rip a game. Like he should have the ones where Steph has, where it's like, I'm dribbling up and it's 27, 28 feet. Like I'm just willing to break the back here. Like this is, you better call a timeout because like it's an onslaught. And when you can do that, because he can really shoot the ball, when you do that, it just brings the defense out. It creates all this space. And they have really good guys on the back end of playing from an advantage, but it really starts with Darius. And Donovan has done such a wonderful job. You're absolutely right. He's taking more catch and shoot threes. He's letting go of the reins. And then when it's his time to really cook, he can do that any single time. He's incredible ISO or pick and roll, whatever it is. He's so good.
But he's another guy that I think has to pick his spots well. And it's going to be my question in the playoffs is, does he ever revert back to his old ways? Because I think Donovan Mitchell, the ball can get sticky with him. But Darius Garland, we're saying the same thing. The talent was there. It was the confidence to do it at volume and to be aggressive. And this year it's clicked for him. And again, I credit Kenny Atkinson. I think coaches make such a big difference to guys having the confidence to play up and the discipline to play down. And he's getting that from Donovan Mitchell and from Darius Garland right now. Yeah. But more importantly, we'll end the show with your guy, Evan Mobley. You called out. You said this guy's a superstar. There's a million players you wouldn't take over him. You know what's funny, man, is there's much made about how much he's handling the ball. The numbers bear this out. He's running more dribble handoffs. I won't say the fulcrum of the offense, but they're using him as the fulcrum more frequently. Yeah. They're placing him in the corners, even though he's not a corner three-point shooter, trusting that he'll read the cuts and read secondary actions. Yeah. And he's been a revelation in that. And obviously defensively, we know what he can do. So what's different to you about him when you watch him? Do you think that this year is a drastic change in how he's playing and how he's being used?
I don't think it's so much there's a drastic change in him skill-wise. I think what you said about Kenny Atkinson earlier of empowering Garland, getting discipline from Mitchell, I think it's more of that and more of like taking a look at the past year, 2 years of like what he's really great at and leaning into that, having everybody have buy-in to that and kind of like empowering Evan of like, this is where you can go. Like, this is what you can do. So to me, it's awesome to see them leaning into that stuff. I'm a sucker for the big guy grab and go into a DHO, into attack. I think that every single offensive possession, like your biggest goal is to create a rotation. If you're creating rotation every single possession, you're going to win the game. And to me, the big guys that can handle the ball, that can pass, they have such an advantage because it's much easier if you have a slower big guy on you to create a rotation of a drive or a DHO. And if they put a little guy on you, you can post and bring a double. Like if you have a guy that can do that, you can create rotation so easily. It's just about leaning into it.
They have a lot of ways to create advantages. I mean, they have him. They have two guards that create advantages nonstop with breaking you down, which in today's NBA, outside of Nikola Jokic and maybe outside of Steph Curry's just like movement around the court, guards that can get around the first line of defense might be the most valuable way to break a defense down because it's so easy. You don't need a whole lot. If you can get a guy that gets into the paint, defense is in rotation. They have two of them. In addition to all these guys, as you mentioned, guys that can make the connecting pass behind them. They're a great story, man, and they're a great basketball story because they have so many guys, even like Karis LeVert, who's not my favorite player, but they have guys that now are doing their strengths within the framework of an offense. Karis LeVert, to me, another guy that can be a little too downhill attack, a little too sticky, but when you put him in the role he has now, that's what he's supposed to do within the framework of the offense, and now it's a value add instead of a mixed variable.
Right. I think the Boston series was huge for Mobley in terms of Allen being out. Like he really got a lot of stuff in the short roll. They got to see on film, like, what does it look like when it's just him out there? Like, and I think that film, when you go back in the offseason, when you can show a guy like this is where you can really pop, and also show him like these are the opportunities that are coming from like the weaknesses you have, like you can get somebody to lean into that stuff. I think there's going to be, the pick and pop doesn't matter as much to me right now because there's Garland and Mitchell. And because those guys demand you to be up at the level as the secondary player. Now, if he was playing with somebody like Shai that didn't demand, coverage up at the level, the pick and pop would be a huge deal. Like that would be a big black eye because you could play drop coverage and get away with it. But, with these two guys, Garland and Mitchell, like you better be up at the level or like they're rifling that thing. So it allows him that opportunity, just like we were talking about with Julius and Anthony Edwards. It allows him that opportunity to play in the short roll, to play 4 versus 3 basketball, 3 versus 2 basketball. And like, to me, he's incredible at that stuff. And it all started in the Boston series of him understanding I can be this.
That's awesome, man. I'm excited. And they play the Celtics on Tuesday. We'll be talking about that with Legs on Wednesday. Cannot wait for that one. That's maybe the game of the year now because that's another test. They've passed a lot of these tests so far this year, smacking the Warriors, some high-profile games. Boston will be ready for them because now that's a high-profile game where you can separate even more. They already have a 3 or 4 game separation. You could separate a lot to really set yourself up. So I am very excited for that game.
His Legs coming by the bar? I got to know.
He'll be by the bar on Thursday and Friday. We're going to be in person for doing our first in-person show. I can't wait.
Nice. How many drinks will be had?
We'll find out, man. We'll find out, man. It'll be a good time. He is Marc Campbell, man. You guys saw, he knows his stuff. He played at Carolina. He's trained a lot of NBA. I shouldn't say trained. Shooting coached a lot of NBA players, continues to do so. You should check him out at Low Man Help Podcast. Low Man Help, like I said, a hidden gem that you're going to be thankful you followed. Mark, thanks so much for doing this. We do have one super chat. Is that right, Producer James? Psycho Blue comes in with a $20 super chat. He says, B-Ball Cthulhu thinks if a team is on the wrong end of a last 2-minute report, that says the game should have gone to them if not for a blown call. The Ref Association should buy cookies and milk for that team. Happy holidays. There's been some high-profile ones here the last couple of days. The Bucks on the wrong end of a couple of them, man. It is true. There are some plays that are literally the difference between win and loss. And I don't know if you saw this, Mark. The pool reporter was asked about the Giannis touch foul, I think, or I can't remember which one it was. They were asked about it, and when they reviewed it, they said the play was incorrect. And then they asked, well, so if you had the ability to review that play, would the game have gone a different way? He said, yes. That was the answer. And you go, literally came down to one play that was called wrong, changed the outcome. Tough break, man.
There's something, the last 2 minutes, this is different than that, but I love when there's a free throw and you're waiting and you can see like the team that committed the foul. You can see the guys like OG Anunoby did it last night where he like kind of like walks around slowly around the free throw line. You're kind of waiting for the video guys to look on the iPad. Like is the green, and you're just, the guy who's shooting the free throws knows if he got fouled or not. He's kind of like looking over. He's waiting to see if the green light's on or not. Those are the best 5 seconds in the league to me. The wait for the green light when a guy's like, am I going to get these 2 free throws or not? That's the best 5 seconds.
I love it. And I love the foul part now because you could be like, oh, the ball's out on that guy, and you review it, and then you get a foul, and you're like, God damn it. Like, kill us a different way. Real quick before we get out of here, our producer wants, there is one up-and-coming player. I'm really curious what you think of his shooting form. So if you could break it down here. We got here. Oh my goodness. We got to see this. Okay. Look at this form. Unbelievable. Talk about balance. Perfect balance. How
That's
would you
a
break
real
down
jump
the
shot.
shooting form?
That's a no. You see, the thing is you don't want to touch something that's perfect. When
There you
something's
go.
perfection, you just hang it in the Louvre. You don't touch it. You all you say is you keep letting that one rip, big fella. You let that one rip. Hey, anytime they give you space to breathe, shot prep, power load, let it rip. That's all you do when it's perfection like that.
James, why did you put that clip in slow motion though? Why didn't you play it at regular speed, man? Why'd you slow it down?
That was 1.5 speed actually, Adam. 1.5 speed. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. He is Marc Campbell. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We are off tomorrow, but Legs and I will be back on Wednesday breaking down a fantastic Cavs Celtics game. Can't wait. Hit that like button on the way out. We'll see you guys there.
Silly like the mayor.